Yeah, that's the book right there, Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook, that's gotten a lot of people talking. You're talking about it, we're talking about it, and I'm going to do it with former White House press secretary for President Clinton, Democratic strategist, and author of Why Women Should Rule the World, Dee Myers, former advisor to the 2008 McCain presidential campaign, Republican strategist Steve Schmidt, columnist for the Washington Post, Ruth Marcus, and Congresswoman from Tennessee and author of the book Life Equity, Realize Your True Value and Pursue Your Passions at Any Stage in Life, Marsha Blackburn. Welcome to all of you. I've gotten great advice on leading this discussion this morning from my wife, Beth, who says, just keep quiet and let others speak. So I want to raise this, and I think the thing that struck me as I've really followed this weekend, look at Time magazine where Sheryl Sandberg is on the cover. And what's the headline? Don't hate her because she's successful. Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg and her mission to reboot feminism. And Ruth Marcus, isn't it amazing that her blueprint for how women can be successful at work is greeted with the word hate? Don't hate her.
Right, and as we were saying, don't hate, nobody would ever say about a man, don't hate him because he's successful. Look, if nature abhors a vacuum, it loves a good cat fight. And she is attractive, she is smart, she is young, she's impossibly rich and impossibly successful. What's not to get the claws out? And I blame, actually, for a change, us women, because she said something provocative, she said something worth debating, but why is it that we need to debate it by sort of acting as if we've passed around a note in junior high school saying, hey everybody, let's be mean to Sheryl today?
Why is the instinct, Congresswoman, for women to be resentful of this sort of advice? Is it a sense that it's incomplete, she doesn't get it, she comes from different circumstances? What? How do you describe that?
I think that women are constantly pushing to get the recognition that they so rightly deserve. As we have talked, you've always got to be twice as prepared as any man as you go into a room and participate in the debate. And I'm a huge cheerleader. I'm so thrilled Sheryl wrote her book, and I am pleased that Dee has done her documentary and done her book. And I like that Ruth is out there talking about it and Steve's supporting us. And, I think that what women have to do is realize it takes all of us pushing and being that trailblazer, pushing through that ceiling in order for others to come along on that path. Somebody's got to go first.
Let me define as simply as I can what I think the major thrust of this advice is from Sheryl Sandberg. What does leaning in mean? She talks about it with Norah O'Donnell on 60 Minutes over at CBS this evening. Here's a piece of that.
They start leaning back. They say, oh, I'm busy. I want to have a child one day. I couldn't possibly, take on any more. Or I'm still learning on my current job. I've never had a man say that stuff to me.
You're suggesting women aren't ambitious.
I'm not suggesting women are ambitious. Plenty of women are as ambitious as men. But I am saying, and I want to say it unequivocally and unapologetically, that the data is clear that when it comes to ambition to lead, to be the leader of whatever you're doing, men, boys outnumber girls and women.
So the point is that women, she argues, lean back too often, too early. They don't lead in. They don't demand that seat at the table. So my understanding of it is to say, look, she's saying ignore what male colleagues or the messages they're sending you. Ignore a lot of the societal messages about leaning back as a woman and really lean in here at work, in your career, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things that she does, we're all very familiar with the external obstacles to women's success. Marsha was just talking about one of them, which is that you expected to be twice as good. But what she really focuses on, and she acknowledges every single one of those and says she's bumped up against every single one of them. But what she's really focusing on is what are the internal obstacles that hold women back? What do we do to ourselves? And we all know those are true too. Women don't raise their hands for promotion. They don't raise their hand to run for office. I don't know why you ran, but so many women think, well, if I just wait a couple more years, if I just become a little bit more of an expert on this policy issue, I'll be ready to run. When they're really ready, and the men who are less prepared are already out there in the campaign. Women who are executive seat all the time, and the women who they think are talented and qualified are not promoting themselves, or not doing what the men are doing in order to try to get that next big job. So they need to do it.
Yeah, women kind of wait to be invited.
Correct.
And men just push their way through. And I think that that's kind of a difference.
And I think this is her big contribution to the debate, which is helping make us more aware of how we do this to ourselves, granted the external obstacles, that we're worried about looking rude at a round table if we interrupt somebody. And in the sort of longer term, we may be thinking about, well, what if I'm an associate at a law firm and I might get married someday and I might have children, so do I, and she talks about leaving before you leave. I think it's really important, but I also think it answers the question, David, of why it's so controversial, which is this is something that hits all of us close to home. If we're deciding to stay home with our children, we could feel criticized by this, though that is not her intention. If we don't have the flexibility or the luxury of choosing to stay home, which most women don't, they're working because they need the paycheck, we could feel criticized and resentful of her. And so because she's talking about something that really hits at the core of our beings, I think is why the hate word comes up.
You know, in the realm of politics, I can just bring Steve in on this. I mean, here you were instrumental. No, we have a voice in this, at least some perspective on it. And look, in the political realm, you work closely with Sarah Palin. One of the things that strikes me about Sarah Palin, here was a conservative woman who was a relatively new governor, and she jumps into this huge new level of presidential politics. And she was living a life that rarely Sheryl Sandberg is advocating. Her husband, Todd, was by her side, a true partner in what they were doing, and totally supportive in a way that Sheryl Sandberg says you have got to have in a partner if you're going to be able to lean in and be successful in the way that she was.
Absolutely, and Todd Palin was a full partner. He was a great partner. He was, in a lot of ways, in my view, a person who made her career possible as a gubernatorial candidate, a governor, ultimately as a vice presidential candidate. But I think that's true in any successful marriage, whether it is the fully supportive female partner or the fully supportive male partner. The reality is no one knows what goes on in anyone else's marriage, but for there to be success, for there to be happiness on this one lap around the track we all get, you want to have full partnership. And I think in any organization where women are not at the table, where it is skewed male, in today's day and age, that's an organization that's deficient. That's an organization that's going to have problems. It's one of the problems we have structurally in the Republican Party. We don't have enough women at the table. But any company, any organization in today's day and age that doesn't give equal opportunity to women, that doesn't advance women to the table, is going to be an organization that has difficulty competing.
And isn't that interesting, Congresswoman, you talk about, I mean, there is the culture in the Republican Party about the next in line. Well, women aren't always the next in line.
Well, that's exactly right, and what women have to do is jump the queue. And sometimes that causes resentment from men and other women also, because if you are too aggressive or if you are outspoken in a manner that a man would be, then you are looked at as being too much so for a woman. But you do have to jump that queue, because we have not had enough women stepping up to move to that national forefront and being on a national ticket. And you have to kind of make your way. You can't wait to be invited. You have to go back and build on the skill set that you have, and as Ruth is talking about, and then you have to have not only a supportive husband but a supportive family that understands and pushes every step.
Sheryl Sandberg makes is that success correlates negatively with likability. The more successful you are, the less likable you are
for a woman.
For a woman, not for a man. There's no problem being a successful man, and that women just have to bite the bullet on that cultural reality.
But does that mean moving more like a man? I mean, that's what the article points out. Like, she's saying that that women should act more like a man in the workplace?
Well, no, I don't think that's what she says. I think what she's saying is you need to be aware of that negative correlation between success and likability and figure out your own way to navigate it. You're interrupting me, and that is really very unattractive to a woman.
No, but once you point out that fact that people correlate likability to success and say, hey, you're penalizing this successful person because she's a woman, that it changes that dynamic. And so by talking about it, by elevating the issue, by pointing it out to people, you can begin to address it.
Well, and part of it is that some men are not comfortable, even in this day and age, they're not comfortable with having a woman as a decision maker. And so that kind of clouds the issue.
How do men respond to this? I mean, I think there's an aspect in any workplace where, you know, men, if they're in truly equal partnerships with their wives, are you know, thinking about their own schedules, are sort of putting this on the agenda in some way. And then the other question that I talk about with my wife is, you know, what is it that we want for our daughters? Do we want Sheryl Sandberg to be part of the spectrum of choices of this is, we absolutely hope that this is somebody that you can become. You may choose to do something else. You may choose to stay at home and raise kids, and that's great too, but this is certainly someone that you should emulate.
I have 2 daughters. I don't want there to be any limits on their horizons. I want them to achieve at the highest level of their abilities, to do whatever they want to do. My wife made the decision to give up her career to stay home with our children. I think that's admirable work. I think it's to be admired. And in our marriage and our partnership, that's what works for us. But you don't want women to have any low horizons, that they are forced to make decisions because there are limits out there that have been imposed. And I think certainly for people of my generation, and I'm 42 years old, we've been accustomed over my entire work life to working with women. And in the firm that I work for, women represent roughly half of the senior leadership of the company. They're vital to the success of the firm. And so I do think that when you look at women in politics, you look at women in business, you look forward to the day when we will have a woman president and the glass ceiling is finally shattered, that there will just be more and more opportunities as the years unfold.
Can I just, Ruth, do you feel like this has started something, and what is the it that it has started?
Well, it has continued what I think of as the endless national discussion about women and gender and the workplace and family. It started 50 years ago. Betty Friedan, I suspect that not us, but somebody is going to be sitting here 50 years from now having the same conversation. Interestingly, I asked my daughter, who's a senior in high school, told her I was writing about this book. I said, do you think about balancing work and family when you think about life ahead? And she said, absolutely, yes, I do. And I said, and do the boys in your grade? And before I could get the words out of my mouth, I said, no way.
No.
They don't think about it at all, which is really interesting. I want to say one thing about Sarah Palin. I thought you talked about jumping the queue. Yes, queue jumping is important. It's really important that when women jump the queue, they're ready to jump the queue, and they come with the background and expertise. Well, otherwise it sets everybody back.
Final point here, Marcia, then I got to take a break.
Women bring a diversity of experience. They travel a very circuitous route in their careers, and they bring all of this wealth of information, working with their children, working in schools, all of these to the table, and that is why I think they are more effective public policy makers many times than their male colleagues.
And you write about that in your book, and a good point to end on. We're going to continue our roundtable discussion in just a minute. We'll talk some politics. We'll talk about it with Jeb Bush when I talk to him in a moment and get reaction from our group right after this.